Hello! In this video, I will be focusing on the extinction of Indigenous languages in Canada and what causes them, and also what are we doing to revive them. I will include 3 case studies of what this revitalization looks like across Canada. Each one will help answer the question of how this loss impacts the people of each community, their culture, and future generations. We will start with the Pentlatch language of Qualicum First Nations, BC. The Pentlatch language of the Qualicum Nation, a nation widely known for their knowledge on the ocean tides and currents, was considered a sleeping language when their last known fluent speaker, Joe Nimnim, passed away in the 1940s. Although Qualicum Nation does recognize speakers like Julia Jim, who spoke Pentlatch since the 1960s, and silent speakers. Silent speakers arose from the trauma they faced in residential schools. Many Indigenous kids who spoke their language were punished for doing so. They might have held great knowledge of their language, but are afraid to speak it again in fear of facing the same punishments again. Another factor of the loss of speakers would be smallpox. Smallpox had been carried by the French settlers and spread across Canada, and Indigenous nations, such as Qualicum Nation, were left vulnerable to this new deadly disease. Many other factors, like war and other languages moving in, also contributed to the loss of the Pentlatch language. Fast forward to 2017, when the current Chief Michael Reclama of Qualicum Nation, had a vision to restore what once was a big part of their culture. Qualicum Nation would partner with the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Recollections, the First Peoples Cultural Council, and the University of Victoria to help formulate a plan. They would introduce a multi-year language revitalization plan that would help greatly in rediscovering Pentlatch language once more. With what little official documentation they had, they turned their attention over to neighboring communities. With historical connections to Ayajutham and similarities to Hulk Amihnam, they would investigate neighboring nations that spoke Ayajutham, such as Comox, Homalkam, and Sliamnam. Many other nations on Vancouver Island, like the Cowichan and Snuneymuxw, and Tsleil-Waututh and Sumas on the mainland speak Hulk Amihnam, which has similarities to the Pentlatch language. While it was a long process, it definitely proved itself to be possible. As of 2023, they now have been declared a living language. Their efforts have not stopped yet, as they continue to revive more words and meanings in Pentlatch. The language of Mi'kmaq, of the Mi'kmaq community in Nova Scotia, has had very few fluent speakers, despite having nearly 800 people who understand the language. Mi'kmaq people and speakers are located in the Atlantic region of Canada and seen mainly in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, though they have a significant presence in Quebec, Newfoundland, Maine, and the Boston area. They are known for their focus on the arts and music. Some prominent figures being Emma Stevens, a Mi'kmaq teenager of Cape Breton, who had covered the song Blackbird by the Beatles in Mi'kmaq. Her song raised awareness to the endangered Indigenous languages like Mi'kmaq, as well as Jeremy Dutcher, who would, with the help of elders in his community, recover once banned songs of Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqey that had been recorded on wax cylinders 110 years ago, to sing once again. Many community members suffer from the trauma of residential schools, and as a result, do not teach their kids their traditional language, Mi'kmaq. They feel they will be more successful speaking and learning English. A legislation introduced in April 17th of 2022 created a partnership between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Nova Scotia government. It officially recognized Mi'kmaq as their first language. Recognizing their language means that, for the government, they must do their part in protecting the Mi'kmaq language and the revitalization of it. For the government also, this is an important step towards reconciliation. Chiefs of Mi'kmaq Nation are given hope with this legislation, as well as since not over 2 or so decades ago, they had their language forced out of them and to never speak it again. In March of 2025, the federal and provincial governments would help fund language revitalizations. This would be presented to the Mi'kmaq community as Canada would pass the Indigenous Language Act in 2019 that prioritized both communities, Indigenous or not, to contribute bringing back a piece of Indigenous culture. The community is now receiving an annual of $1.3 million in provincial funding and $7.1 million in federal funding, with 75% of their provincial funding going towards community members helping take initiative towards the revitalization. Their new strategy, the Mi'kmaq Language Revitalization, a plan not only to preserve language, but support its growth as a language and the importance it has within their culture, and how it also holds so many teachings and ways of life for the community. It will be a long-lasting project, but the province's focus on including Indigenous voices, peoples, chiefs, values, traditions, and generally letting them take the lead in finding a vital piece of their culture will contribute so much to the development of their language. Lastly, the Atikamekw Nation. They're best represented by the communities of Manawan and Wimatasi in Quebec. The Atikamekw are best known for their expert craftsmanship of bark, most notably being their birch bark canoes. They've been involved in various language conservation projects for nearly a decade now. The Atikamekw Nation shows that language conservation is just as important. They value preservation of language and the culture that comes with it. In doing this, the Atikamekw Nation collaborated with Carleton University of Ottawa in June of 2021 to create a second edition of Atikamekw French Dictionary for all to use. The dictionary includes 220 themes and sub-themes emphasizing traditional knowledge that connects to the language, as explained by Nicole Pettigway, who is the language coordinator at the council. The project was funded by the Social Science and Humanities Research Council, and throughout the creation of this 13,000-word dictionary, many prompted members of the community were consulted, most notably elders who would help with writing out the language. Another project Atikamekw people have worked on towards language preservation is Wikipedia. Wikipedia, directed by Natasha Harold, started out as a school project in which she tasked students in her grade 10-11 computer science class to code a website heavily inspired by Wikipedia, but fully written in Atikamekw. They would study the rules and markup language of Wikipedia to create Wikipedia. Atikamekw is a primarily oral language, so to properly confirm spellings and grammar, they would collaborate with the elders of the nation to help write down their language. With 1,000 articles on Wikipedia, it's clear to see that it has an amazingly positive impact on preservation. With the new digital age, Wikipedia aims to be an accessible way to access the traditions, teachings, and history of the Atikamekw Nation, and also bring those to a new generation. The young people of the Atikamekw Nation did not have resources like Atikamekw dictionaries and Wikipedia to encourage their speaking of the language. Rather, they spent more time using French as their secondary language to English. These projects ensure that their language does not die out, and that can be very difficult with an oral language. Here, though, we see these languages thrive once again as they're given a chance with dedicated community members, project directors, funding, and strong cultural spirit. I first want to mention the impact residential schools, the 60 Scoop, and similar programs installed to erase Indigenous culture. The loss of many people's cultures were a direct result of the genocide inflicted upon Indigenous groups, kids, women, men. I mention this because it's important we don't forget all about all they've gone through generation by generation. Reconciliation and revitalization isn't just about saying sorry and then moving on, but also acknowledging why this happened and how it impacts different communities all across Canada. When we recognize where the root of these problems are, then we can move forward and grow. This is a little insight to where we need to come from in order to fully understand each community's stories towards revitalization. This may look like archaeologists and historians working on the knowledge of elders and communities, or it may be the sums of money permitted by Canada passing bills like the Indigenous Language Act to help fund their regaining of culture through language. We see many communities lose their ways of life, as many Indigenous communities are oral with how they pass down teachings from generations. This is what has made languages extinct or asleep, but also a root solution in revitalization. The knowledge elders hold after all these years has been such a pillar in all three of these cases. The knowledge they held on to for centuries safely stored in their brain. Now, in this day and age, many Indigenous cultures have had to learn how to write or annotate their language to keep it alive. For example, words can be spelt in different ways but spoken or mean the same thing, just as they developed their language to be written. In the words of Richard Wagamese from his short story, Indigenous Columnist, brimming with insight. The only way to ever be able to find a secure future and to hold on to my essential indigenousness through it all was to be the horse thief. The horse being a metaphor for white people's technology. And thieving would be examples like Wikipedia. This isn't to say that they're thieves, but rather to take advantage of white people's technology in preservation of language and revitalization of it. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned as much as I did, and maybe even more. Goodbye!